Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to the homestead. It's winter, and winter's a time when we need to do lots of stuff indoors, and one of those things is planning, or in this case, bit of design. Behind me is our vegetable garden, which you've seen in many videos over the years, but you've also probably noticed, if you've been with me some time, that I've been looking to extend that garden. And in this video, I'm going to take you through the sort of design, what my thoughts are for the garden, because it's not simply a case of doing what we've done before and just making it bigger. I want to do something different, something that's going to be of real benefit to the garden as a whole. And I've learned a lot over the last few years, which I can then put into this new garden. So I thought it would be a good time now to take you through that process using the design tool here, this 3D. So I've started the process of designing the garden in 3D, and it's all to scale as well, and I can build it up. So let's get into the computer side of it, into Blender, and I'll talk you through what my thoughts are and how it's going to work. Okay, so here we have the garden as you know it, or if it's the first time you've seen it, this is my garden. This is obviously a drone photo of the garden as a base, and we do have a centre line of trees here which have historically always been there. So and we have a little man which represents kind of scale size. So we need to start putting some objects on here just to give it a bit of life. This is obviously the old garden here. It's now 5 years old. This photo was taken back in autumn last year, so around October time. So let's add the old beds, I suppose. So we have our standard kind of bed layout, 10 meters by 75 centimeters, with wood chips path in between. There are 24 beds there, sorry, 25, and then we have two long beds of that we put potatoes in here. These are traditionally also covered over winter with this plastic tarp. This is a farmer's tarp, silage tarp, which is thicker than normal plastic, and it's UV protected, so it's perfect for covering weeds. And as it happens, also most of the two potato beds which are here, this was the size it came, so we may as well use it. I couldn't get it, the perfect size for the area that I wanted, but I got the next best thing. So there's the beds. We're not really looking at that in this video. Also, we have a fence that we've now built. So what we did is, when I came to build a decent fence around, took the fence up to the previous ploughed line. Now this hasn't been ploughed for 5 years, but the line was still there, with the idea that we could, at some stage, which is what we're talking about now, build an extension to the garden. And my original thoughts were just to simply extend it how I have, but I have other thoughts now based on what I've learned. Let's put some plants in the beds, old beds as well, just for a bit of life there. So I use this Blender 3D program. I find this really helpful for planning and getting a handle on how I want things to work. I'd learnt this skill a couple of winters ago. It was a good use of my time in winter to learn it, and here we are now applying it. And I will, as you know, I've now got a commercial arm, and I'll be doing this for other clients as well. It's a good thing to do over winter, really helpful. So let's look at the new part of the garden here. Actually, before we do that, we also need to add some garden structures. So we have the water tank here, and I built some compost bins as well last year. And so we've got this space here. Some of this space will be used for something else during the year, for putting, just general space for dumping resources, compost, wood chips, stuff like that. So in the new garden, we need to add, first of all, we'll add some base soil. We've got the cover at the moment, the plastic cover. We'll take that cover off eventually, and we'll have our base soil here. It gives us a starting place to work with. Now, this piece of land here is on a very, very slight slope. It slopes down probably 1.5 meters. It's a very gentle slope. It is enough though to, if rain, with a large downpour, rain can wash out the wood chips when they get quite thin. It's not a big issue, but it is something that I would like to address in this garden. So rather than have any kind of beds, I mean, the idea originally was that these beds up here would capture any flow off the field that was coming down here off the field and stop it from running completely over if there was a real bad event. And they do that quite well, actually. But we want to put some beds. This piece of land is about, see, once you start doing it to scale, then you can just look. So it's 7 meters wide. You've got 7 meters there to play with. So my first thought was we'll just have beds then sideways, and these 75 centimeter beds do work really well in this context here of this garden. And the reason they're that wide is so that you can straddle across them when you're working, so it makes for a good working environment. My thoughts here are slightly different, and what I'm thinking is beds that are, as you can see, this way, but they're considerably wider. In fact, they're twice as wide, because there will be a walkway here, with the exception of that top one, which is again 75 centimeters. I'm now thinking to have slightly wider walkways and to have the beds double width, 1.5 meter, so that you can access them from either side, and if need be you could walk in the middle, put your foot in the middle just to kind of capture balance, but they're accessible from both sides. They run the opposite way to the current beds, so that any water that does come through, any rainfall, just doesn't run through and gather pace. It just goes into the next bed. The land is a very slight slope, like I say. You don't need to have berms and stuff like that in there to capture water. So this gives us quite a number of beds. Now, last year when I was out in the garden, I noticed that when this was covered up with the plastic, what happened was, because the ground is not perfectly even, so the water will run a little bit, but it was gathering in pools on top of the plastic. When the plastic was on top here, it was gathering in pools, and what that meant was what I noticed when I went out into the garden, that there's more water-based life. So there were dragonflies in the garden flying about. They were bathing in the water on the pool, on the plastic, and then they were about, and that led to me, it's anecdotal, of course, it's my story, but it felt like there were less mosquitoes, and there were fewer dundles as well, which is the local small horsefly. So the garden was a more pleasant place to work in because of that. So that led me to think, well, maybe we need to keep somehow a water feature in here, which would lead to a better better environment. And it actually is, proven time and time again that water facilitates a better ecosystem, not just for dragonflies, but if we had a slightly larger water feature, shall we say, in the garden here, it would make for a good ecosystem as part of the wider garden. So if we were to perhaps get rid of 2 or 3 beds in the middle, like that, and we can once again remove our cover, that could facilitate some space for a water feature, and I'm not worried about losing bed space. I've got lots of beds. I'll move on to what I'm going to do with the beds and the way I'm going to treat it in a minute, but let's just look at this water feature first. So if we look at the water, maybe we could put some kind of water feature there in the middle, a pond, as it were, just a small pond. I'm thinking because our soil here is very sandy, we would need to put some kind of liner there, and I might even use some of the plastic from that's been used as the cover, because we have no intention of using it anywhere else. And it's such a big piece of plastic, we could afford to lose half of it, double up, use it as a pond liner, and then keep the other half for anything we need to cover elsewhere for blocking out weeds. We could use that as a base. And then perhaps it would be quite nice to have some rocks and some plants around for wildlife to get in and out, and just to make it look a bit pleasant, rather than just simply a hole with water in it, and trying to entice some more of. Let's put some more plants in there as well, make it quite a nice water feature in the middle there, and that would solve that problem and allow those dragonflies and probably frogs and toads to live there. I don't know about fish, but because of the harsh winter here, I don't know how deep I would make the pond, to be honest. So that would solve that problem, and I think that would look quite nice actually. So what about these beds? What are we going to put in them? What are we going to treat it? So I'm thinking that this is kind of, it's not monoculture really, but the beds are fairly, each individual bed. I know I did some companion planting last year with leeks and brassicas in the same bed and stuff like that, and I do have some calendulas and a few flowers here, but essentially we have one or two, everything's treated as blocks, because that's the way that the efficient garden works really, with the block planting. What I'm thinking about here is something a bit more polyculture, a bit more random, and so I think we'll be introducing things like trees, small trees randomly planted, and start using story space, so overstory and understory. What does that look like if we were to put a tree perhaps here somewhere? I think initially obviously it would be a bit smaller than this, but this is kind of the idea. And then just put scale that down a bit, I think. This is the beauty of these 3D programs, the 3D design process. You can really play about, and here I'm just demonstrating the principles really. So wouldn't need to have trees on every single bed, but small apple trees, small cherry trees, small fruit trees of some description, which could be kept pruned so they don't get out of control. Not necessarily dwarf trees, but they would work as well. In fact, dwarf trees would work as an understory element. We could even train trees to crawl along the wire fence as well. And then we have things like we could put some fruit bushes in. And then these are examples really. You don't have to commit to putting the bushes, you don't have to spend hundreds of euros on bushes and doing it all in one go. You could build it up over many years. But the idea is that on this, whilst everything here is in blocked and neat and tidy, in rows, here is a bit more random, and you just when you've got fruit bushes, fruit trees or nut trees, and then when you have your things to plant, we could have some flowers here randomly. We could have a potato a couple of potato plants here, then some leeks, and then some whatever, and they're all planted randomly around. And what you do is you kind of treat it like, I've heard it referred to as a grocery row. So a grocery row system, you just kind of go along the rows and you're picking, have some peas here and beetroots here and whatever, sort of random things. And then slowly over the year or years, you would have random stuff all over the place, really, which you can go along and pick. Obviously, down the bottom we'll have some sprawling pumpkins and things like that. You name it, well, gherkins, whatever, we can have it. It's completely random. And there's flowers, and some will be perennial flowers, some will be annual, some I might just, put in bunches of wildflower seeds all over the place. Not all over the place, but in clumps, so that will self-seed every year. And it's going to be a kind of really nice ecosystem, a place to hang out, bit of a food forest, I suppose, if you want to use those terms. But it's a completely different approach on this side to this side. And I think it's going to be a really interesting experiment as we start next year and build upon it year on year, how it turns out. And I really like this kind of no rules, random approach. Perhaps random is not completely fair, but intentionally random, more like nature, really. That's the idea, is just more of an approach like nature. Herb plants and stuff like that, and as we, few strawberries here and there, whatever, and you're kind of wandering through the wilderness, as it were, picking things as you like to and as and when you're there. And we have the wildlife of the pond as well. I think it's going to make for a really nice garden, and that's kind of my idea for this piece of land for the next year. How much we get done, we'll wait and see, but that doesn't matter, is it? I've got an idea, I've got a plan now, and I can start working towards it. So that's my ideas. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. I look forward to hearing your responses and what you think could work really well, what might not work very well. What do you think about the pond idea? Stuff like that. Leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching the video. If you like this video, I've got lots of other videos that you will like as well. If you're interested in the 3D modeling exercise, then get in touch and we can talk. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye for now.